All right, then let's go to our special presenter today. Linda, I appreciate you jumping in to fill the gap. If you run out of something to say before your 30 minutes is up, which I can't imagine happening, I'll have to tell you. But if you get done, I have a little something I can share about the Basha plant, snake root plant. But I don't want to get on your 30 minutes. If you have good stuff to fill it, and I can do the Basha at the end as part of what I'm going to do. Now, I don't have a biography for you, Linda, so all I know is what you've told us about yourself. So if you want to back up and give us a little history of your involvement with Common Ground and with this kind of sculpture, that you could do that, or you can just jump in and go. Your call.
Well, my Brandenburg relatives were all musicians. My grandmother's brother had turned poems into hymns, and they're published in the Methodist Hymnal. Her father, my great-grandfather, was the music teacher in Carroll County. So by the time I was 3, I was playing piano. I had a little stool I had to climb up so I'd be tall enough to reach the keys. And I played my first original composition at Peabody when I was 7 years old. So everybody thought I would be a musician, and I think they changed me from left-handed to right-handed. So between working with both hands, and I've got a little dyslexia going on, but I'm very coordinated. So it's easy for me to work with a lot of tools. I didn't intend to be a teacher. I thought I might be an actor or a performer or an artist. They were my majors. I've always been a writer. But I ended up teaching for 52 years. So what do you know? And as we were thinking about how to fill this gap creatively, since our friend Tyrell is up on the mountain with the sheep, he thought he was going to be presenting with us next week. I found a PowerPoint, and Lynn's going to be kind enough to share that for me. While she's doing that, I'll tell you about the torque that I'm wearing. The show that Papadowski and I are doing at Noma Gallery, you're all invited to the opening, is called Torque and Flow, with the double entendre of the word torque, which means to twist, but it's also a very stiff necklace made very famous by the Vikings. So you can see my clasp also has the poppy bud and leaf. It is a rigid necklace. And as I was telling you, it contains the bud, symbol of the girl, the flower, symbol of the woman, and the pod, symbol of the crone, with a promise of rebirth and regeneration, which is the reason why I picked this for this series. Welcome to Toll House Studio. My house was built in 1768 by the Pennsylvania Dutch and the Amish. My studio was rebuilt in 2010. This is a jeweler's workbench, and you can see my book of patterns on my chair. And that's the way a jeweler's tool bench looks when work is happening. This is one of my favorite areas of my studio. Notice that there's a whole wall of hammers to the left of my anvils and stakes. Robert was talking about lightning struck wood. I have a big holly tree in my backyard because somebody in my family for about 5 generations has been struck by lightning in every generation. So lightning has a particular significance to me. This is lightning struck wood, which means that what's underneath that anvil is very hard. So it can sustain no matter the power of my blows. I bought that anvil at an auction in Pennsylvania. I was one of the few women there. It was a farm auction. I heard other people bidding on this anvil. I wanted it because it has a real long snout. And I said, I'll bid $67.50 for that anvil. And there wasn't a sound. And the auctioneer said, blah, 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 I hear $70. And nobody bid. Sold to the little lady for $67.50. And one guy next to me said, what are you going to do with that anvil? And the guy on the other side said, how you going to get it to your car? I said, gentlemen, you're my two new best friends. Help me get this anvil to my car, and I'll tell you what I'm going to do with it. So some of these tools have been inherited from my mentor. In the showcase you see above the anvil are my mentor, John Fix's 2 magnifying glasses. And you see a lot of tools that I use, the rolling mill and so forth, in my studio. Next. So looking down the line, I work like I'm reading from left to right. So at the far end, you see my tanks. That's where I solder. There's an upright sander. Then there's a buffer. And there's some rolling mills in addition to my hammer. So these are all tools that I use for the techniques of diminished diameter forging and repoussage, which I'm teaching this summer. I taught diminished diameter forging in the fall. I taught bald wire beaded chain jewelry at a spring workshop. And this summer I'm teaching repoussage, the sculpting of flower and leaves. And I think in the fall, we're going to do a piercing workshop. Next. Well, this is my entire studio in one shot. And you can see I have 1 or 2 things. My family lives in fear that something will happen to me. Next. All right, we're talking about torques, and there are many different kinds. Some of them are circlets, which means they're a rigid torque, and sometimes they clasp on the back, as the one that I'm wearing does, and sometimes they clasp on the side. This is a Cabernet Sauvignon circlet. Pat Brodowski was kind enough to get me into Monticello with the gardeners at dawn one day, and I spent a glorious morning in and amongst the grapevines that Thomas Jefferson was gifted with when he was ambassador to France. So I learned about Trebbiano Bianca, I learned about Malvasia Bianca, and I learned about Cabernet Sauvignon. It was a time of year when the vines and leaves were prolific and curling and healthy, and that's what I have featured in this circlet. So you can see the torque, the twist, the evidence, and the innuendo of growth as it's happening in this circlet. Next. Here are some other Cabernet Sauvignon pieces. I work in a series, not all at the same time, but sometimes I get rolling. And my favorite question is, what if? So if the plant says to me, what if I became a belt buckle? What if you made me into a cuff bracelet? What if I become a pendant or a pair of earrings? So these are all individually cut, individually soldered. They are each one of a kind, even though they're works in a series. I am a botanical portrait artist. Next. So I work with the plants in front of me, and sometimes they're extremely realistic and actually life-size, like the grape leaves you just saw. Sometimes I abstract or modify or simplify. Some of my pieces are very complex. And sometimes I just want to be simpler, airy. So this is my interpretation of a calla lily. It's a calla lily shrug. This is a torque. This is a solid neck piece, but it rests around your neck and rests very gently on your chest. These are Akoya pearls. They are a Japanese pearl, and I love them because they're very round. Next. My dogwood series is one of my most popular. These come from the grove of American dogwood back campus at now McDaniel College. So to be politically correct, when the college changed its name 2 decades ago, I had to move from Western Maryland dogwood to McDaniel dogwood. And this is simplified a bit. You can see that each of the petals has that very traditional little indentation in it. This dogwood pendant is being shown on a neck vine. This is my creation. It's asymmetrical, which I prefer, especially when dealing with a very symmetrical pendant. So one side you see the curvilicious part of the neck vine, and the other side is the smooth part that allows the pendant to drop on. So when my collectors invest in a neck vine, it doubles their pendant wardrobe, because what would look very symmetrical on a chain is going to look stunning on an asymmetrical neck vine. Next, this is my Savannah. I love this series. I never get tired of working in it because every piece is so unique, just like Spanish moss. And after I told my best friend, I said, well, the Spanish moss in Beaufort, South Carolina is different than the color of the Spanish moss in Charleston or Edisto Beach or Savannah or Hilton Head. And he's like, you artists, you've got too active. So I talked to Barb Steele and I'm like, Barb, if there are trees growing in sand, isn't the host going to be nourishing the Spanish moss and make the color different than Hilton Head, where the Spanish moss was growing in a grove of live oaks and pine trees? And she said, of course it is, because the nutrition that goes to the host feeds the Spanish moss and it influences the color of the moss. So again, you see here is another torque in the Spanish moss series, but with different things hanging on it. This is the lovely Susanna Herrick Bainbridge. We did a wedding shoot with Susanna as my model, and you can see how lovely this variety of pearls, Baroque, Akoya, freshwater, combine on this particular torque. I do a lot of weddings. Next. This is my Taos Morning Glory series. The Morning Glories, I lived in Taos for almost a year. After my brother passed, right after 9/11, I needed a sabbatical. So I moved out to Taos for a year. And the Morning Glories, this is the actual size of an entire plant, diminished by altitude and lack of rain. A morning glory that would cover an entire arbor here in Maryland is about as long as your hand there. And what contributes to the design of this is the specific shape, almost heart shape of the leaves, different than ours. And the buds sit nicely in a little cup. If you look at the morning glories here, those cups have little things that go up and hold the bud. And this is a side clasping circlet. It is a torque. I make these in both circlets and shrugs. There are currently 3 of them left. There were 8 in this series. The first one was so popular, I did them to honor the 4 sacred directions, because my studio was within a mile of Taos Pueblo. And I'll talk more about that when we get to the heart armor. So I did a north, east, south, and west. Here's a morning glory cuff bracelet. I do these only on commission because they are very size specific to the wearer. Next. You gotta do baby spoons if you do weddings, right? So I've done a couple of these morning glory spoons. I just love the way the handle of the spoon frames the composition of the plants within. So again, like the girl, the woman, and the crone, you've got a young bud, you've got a flower, and you've got a kind of wilted, withered seed pod. Next. Here is a woman on Christmas morning, and she got her gift. Her husband commissioned a Morning Glory belt buckle, and she is wearing it in her kitchen with her morning glass of milk. If you want to make somebody happy, give them something special. This is similar to what Barb was wearing yesterday. I haven't seen her to see if she's got the circlet. She's got the very first one, numero uno. And this is a very recent shrug. This is the first. This one belongs to Carrie Will, a dear friend of mine. I have a second one that's going into this show. Again, the shrug just drapes over your shoulders. The Ivy's one of my most prolific series because it's a symbol of eternal love. It's an everlasting, all seasons of the year you can find ivy. So these are my triple cascade ivy earrings. When you look at ivy, it graduates in size. How couldn't I, as an artist, create a triple cascade ivy earring? What if? I also make the double cascade, which more people can wear who don't have this Nefertiti style neck that Susanna has. She's wearing a neck vine with an ivy pendant. I collect ivy all over the world. People that travel with me are like, I saw you picking ivy over there at the Casbah. I need a pendant to remember this trip. And I'll make them one. So the plant gives me its most perfect specimen. I speak to it, I say, okay, I'm collecting. And all of a sudden, this leaf rears up its head and said, I'm the one, I'm the one. And that becomes the pattern for that particular piece. This is a one of a kind, and if you have a 24-inch belt, then step right up. This fit me when I made it. It's a very early piece. Many people have tried it on. No one can afford it. I started this one year as a demonstration at Waterford. It probably took me 2 or 3 years demonstrating several hours, 3 days in a row to make all the leaves. And again, you see them graduating in size just like ivy really does. We make napkin rings. What if? I made a set of wedding jewelry for a couple, and for the first anniversary, he called me and said, she only uses cloth napkin rings. And I never know what size the napkin's going to be. I need adjustable ivy napkin rings in her family pattern, please. Well, she had called me and said, he's wearing that bolo all the time. I made him one like the one that Lynn is wearing. He's in a country band. Can you make him a belt buckle? In our family pattern, please. I said, of course. That was first anniversary. Around the third anniversary, the grandmother's call. In our family pattern, please, we need a baby spoon and a rattle. So when you get custom jewelry, you can see her wearing the cuff bracelet. She's wearing my Beijing necklace and earrings. These pearls were collected from China, the Lake of Beijing. So this is truly a one of a kind. And this beautiful ivy plant right near the Lake of Beijing said, here's my best leaf. And that's what you see on that necklace. This is my Hart Armor series. This started in Taos. And like grapes and ivy and other things, I've been doing this series for about 24 years. It started, I was thinking about milkweed pods. And you can see on the left, if you inverted that, it would look just like a milkweed pod. I tried to imitate the texture with this reticulation. And on the right, I've used diminished diameter forging for an asymmetrical half. I had 2 pods and I was filing them. I collect harmonica players. And this harmonica player that I collected in Taos was telling me he was there because the love of his life had walked out of his life. And I said, Johnny, you need some Hart Armor, and I'm going to build it for you. And those 2 milkweed pods turned upside down and came together to form a heart. But just so happened in Taos Pueblo, the river had gone dry in the first time of the memory of the people, and they started a drumming circle. And of course, Johnny took his harmonica over there and from my studio, I could hear this drumming 24/7. So I'm hammering out these pod-like forms and figuring out how I'm going to make this heart armor. And from the air, if you look at Taos Pueblo, there are actually two pueblos there a long time ago. And the river divided it, but it was the life force of the village. Everybody got their water there. So on the fourth day, it rained and it brought water back into the river. They had gone to the sacred lake, they had fasted, they had prayed to Creator, they did a thing with the youth where they fasted. And on the fourth day, it rained and brought water back in the Pueblo. So all my heart armor has a life force, a rivulet of energy running down the middle. So they're amulets. In time of adversity, you always go, oh, and grab at your chest. So if you have heart armor, it's like a plea to make things a little better. Here's a smaller version. I use a lot of Mexican fire agate in these. Each one's like a little Grand Canyon. The asymmetrical nature of these, 1/2 reticulated, 1/2 diminished diameter forging, called for a pair of very asymmetrical earrings, and here they are. The first one I showed you was my tribute to Diego Rivera. This is my first of 3 tributes to Frida Kahlo, his wife. If any couple needs heart armor, it's Diego Rivera and Frida Kahlo. If you haven't watched the movie or read any books about them, treat yourself. One of the most famous couples of the last century, very stormy relationship. Frida had an accident on a bus when she was a girl. It broke her spine. It caused her a life of misery. This pendant can also be the clasp, so you can wear it with just these mussy pearls in the front, or you can wear the clasp in the front, and it actually unlatches and clasps, much like the brace that she wore on her body for most of her life. This is heart armor inspired by a milkweed pod. Here's the second version. I continue to use naturally rose-colored pearls, but you can see there's lots of wiggly things there. I don't think I have a picture of the third one. And here's how it looks on a model with the mussy pearls kind of wiggling on your skin. It's a very interesting feeling, and she's wearing a reticulated cuff. These are the heart shield earrings. That is diminished diameter forging, one of my very best designs. People say, who wears this stuff? It's so big. It's so unusual. And the perfect people managed to find the perfect pieces from my collection. They tend to be self-confident women, many of them professional women. Those of you who know Joan Coley, when she became president and changed the name of Western Maryland to McDaniel College, I'm like, Joan, you're speaking in front of people all the time. You're a brilliant, funny, intelligent woman. You can't just wear wimpy jewelry. You've got to have something that makes a statement. And obviously, this woman is making a statement with a very asymmetrical piece of my jewelry. Thank you, Lynn.
Linda,
Yeah.
I'm gonna show my necklace because not everyone was on. So let me just spot my and this gives a good example of somebody who clearly does not have the neck of Herrick's daughter, but has, you know, I love this ivy And it has these darling little stars, or I guess little mini ivies at the bottom of the bolero. So I guess this is sort of like what you did for the band leader too. But
Yes.
I love this. It's very flexible and can be worn with, shirts. So thank you for your magnificent art.
Thank you.
Really.
Thank you. So question
like to-
3.
Questions or comments?
I'd like to make a comment here. I was so happy that Linda reminded me about the Ivy Torque. I think it became, let's see if I can get this thing better. It actually fits my neck and it is so comfortable. And in your old age, it's really hard to, with these chains to latch them. This is so easy to put on. I mean, I think that you could go sell it to AARP members. But I just love the Ivy. And we were sitting on my front porch and somehow another, this plant thing came up and the Ivy was created. But I want to show you something that means so much to me. I was wearing it the other day. Linda is just such a creative person. I handed her a little, 3 little Cape May, what they call Cape May diamonds. They were little quartz that I picked up on the beach after I got off the ferry boat. I don't know if you can see this or not. I finally got, and that's all I did. I handed her these stones and they mean so much to me. I wear it all the time. I had to get a longer chain so I could get it over my head and didn't have to latch it. But she fashioned it into a nice, there we go. So, well, and a little glass of wine is real good with this. So yeah, I like the drink. So, but I always have it on. It's something special. And I think about Linda when I wear it. I do.
One of my best friends was a hunter. He's no longer with us. His son and his crew are doing some work on my place now. And one of the guys who's known me for a long time, he says, "Are you still doing hunting jewelry?" He says, "I got some elk ivories." He said, "Will you do something for me for these?" And I said, "Sure, bring them over." There was the sister of a former student had a dog that meant so much to her. And she kept one of his teeth. And like I do elk ivories, I make a hollow form that encapsulates it, and she wears it all the time.
Great moment.
That's just neat when you know somebody that does this kind of stuff and they make a piece just for you or for somebody in your family that's special. You just hand it down.
Linda, I don't know if you're following the chat, but Heather just posted with exclamation points that all of your work is gorgeous, which indeed it is.
Thank you. Well, let me extend an invitation to come to the show that Papadowski and I are doing at NOMA. Our opening is 5 to 8 o'clock on Saturday the 6th. It's part of First Saturdays in Frederick. And if you've never done that, it's like Carnival. There are musicians on every block. The galleries all have receptions, free food, free wine, lots of extended happy hours. You better make a reservation if you intend to eat dinner there because it's hard to get in a restaurant. But you'll eat so much at all the galleries, you won't eat dinner. And then we're having a gallery talk. If you can't make that because you're away 4th of July weekend like Lynn, come to our gallery talk, which is on the 28th at the end of the month. Galleries open 12 to 4 on Sundays, and our gallery talk will be 2 to 3. So you can find out more. I'll have 2 towers and 9 showcases of jewelry. This is the biggest show of jewelry I've ever had in a gallery, and maybe the last one because it's just about killed me. Any other questions?
Any other
And if you
questions?
want to make flowers and leaves, I'm doing that next week in the afternoon from 1 to 3:45. Join Sana.
I have a question, Ms. Linda.
Yep.
First of all, your work is gorgeous, all of them. And the question is, how much is the price of the belt that you said no one can afford?
I don't know.
Oh,
Probably over 3 grand. I've got something like maybe 80, 120 hours of work in that belt.
yeah, gotcha. It's beautiful.
Thank you. We can try it on you.
Absolutely.
Okay, Robert, looks like it's back to you.
Okay, thank you so much, Linda, for filling the gap. I can't say I'm glad Tyrell didn't make it, but I'm glad Tyrell's absence made it possible for you to share your work with us. You've talked a little bit about your work through the years where you've helped me host this, but that just gives me a much deeper appreciation for what you're doing. And I love the centrality of plants in the work that you're doing. So that was just perfect for our class. Well, I want to give you this. This will be our last, my last presentation, because tomorrow we're going to have a panel discussion and show and tell with our art projects. So this is my last chance to talk to you. Of course, if we run dry out of time, I'll tell a story or something to make sure you get your money's worth at the end of the class. Well, we've talked all this week about how plant materials, plant forms show up in Muskogee ceremony. Now, I thought for the last day we would just go right straight to the source, not a basket to hold power or a mat to honor power, but the thing itself. Plants hold, for Muskogee people, plants hold a tremendously important source of power, particularly power for care of the soul, power for accomplishing ceremonial goals, power for health and healing, power for loosening the soul to travel and go into other worlds when that's necessary. They're just plants are just terribly important, a very important part of our whole life, not just our ceremonies. But I thought what I would do today is show you some direct elements of power. Now, this is a little saffron tin that I had some saffron in it, and I don't know if you can hear it rattling. It's got 4 little small terminated quartz crystals. Let me see if I can let you see those. Yeah, there you go. They're Muskogee people use crystals in several ways. I talked about the sabia earlier, the war magic and hunting magic, but they're also used in healing and in divination, and just as is power boost batteries. Maybe that would be a good analogy. These can store up energy then that you can use to focus your purpose or to increase the power. Say if you were making a medicine, you might want to use one of these prepared crystals and drop it in the medicine when the medicine's finished to boost it up and to increase its energy. Now, these 4 crystals are in this little tin, laying on this mat of pressed flowers.
Wow.
And the focus is not going to be good on this, but you can see that there are white and red and yellow and spiky flowers of all different kinds. I went out in high summer several years ago after Sakim had talked about this kind of thing, and gathered these flowers and some of the tendrils and leaves and stems, and then sort of wove them together into this little mat, and they're glued down onto a piece of tissue paper to help hold them together. And this collection of flowers is called Little Stars. It's a way of connecting the earth power that, you know, is drawn up from the other world, the water and the earth and the minerals and all of that creative energy and power that lives in the other world, up into the middle world, where they are, you know, where the flower plants grow and the flowers bloom, and we have our interaction with them. And they lift their heads toward the upper world, and we connect the flowers with the stars. The stars are like little blossoms. We think about the stars in other ways too. They can be sweet berries. They can be pearls, like some of those natural pearls that Linda used in her work. They can be the campfires of the departed, as we talked about yesterday in the story of the three sisters. But they're like little blooms, little blooms of energy. So the little stars, collection of pressed blossoms, unite the three worlds. You remember in talking about lightning struck wood earlier in the week, I pointed out that the power of lightning struck wood is that it unites the three worlds. The lightning, which comes from the upper world into the middle world and through the tree down into the other world, unites the three worlds. And the little stars do that also. So you keep your little stars in a container of some sort. I use this little tin because I wanted to be able to put things in and take things out, but it would be more traditional to have this sewn into a deerskin leather bag of about this size that would be laced together at the top so you could put things in and take things out. I have one of those. I actually meant to bring that up from the basement so I could show you, but I forgot. So you'll have to use your imagination. But you've seen medicine bags that people wear, native people wear around their necks that and they've got the good stuff in it. So the little stars, whatever you have that you need to charge up, you put that in with your little stars, and that brings the power of the three worlds, the uniting of the three worlds into whatever it is that you're charging up. And I keep these 4 crystals in here, and if I need to strengthen medicine, or if I'm talking to somebody about their need for healing, whether it's healing of the body or healing of the spirit or healing of the soul, the self, I may hold one of those in my hand or keep one in my pocket just to help form that connection. I might give a crystal like this to someone who is struggling with something where they may need something to help them focus on the power that Creator and creation provides to move toward health or balance or happiness. So they can be placed in to many different uses. So here is a little tin of power. Now, I won't talk much about this now because I've already mentioned it several times, even today, lightning struck wood. Here's a little basket of thunderbirds that are made of lightning struck wood. Now, I told this story the other day. I'll remind you that this lightning struck wood came from the square ground that I established down in the woods behind my house, where I gather with friends for ceremonies. And this is oak that stayed outdoors long enough to begin to slightly decompose. This kind of wood that has, I say, here's one that has not started down that road, but it's called spalted wood. And I think it's especially pretty because it has the mineral colors, and the wood has begun to transform and go into another form. So these are made of the lightning struck wood from the time that the lightning struck our ceremonial space. I'm glad we weren't there. That might have been more power than we would want. And whenever someone comes to visit in our community, I give them one of these to remember their visit and encourage them to, to get a chain or a string or something and wear it when they need a special power boost, and tell them that I hope that that Thunderbird will bring them back to our square ground again sometime. And so we can do we can find objects of power to share and to use in our community. All right, the last thing I want to show you, and this gets us right down to plant power in its most direct form. I'm making a little room here on my table, and I'll be moving back and forth. I want to show you the process of making one of our ceremonial medicines. It's the most powerful medicine that we use in ceremony. It's made from the basha plant, the button snake root. Here's the bloom, and that's where it gets its name, button. These little green with little tiny white blossoms popping out in it. These look to somebody like buttons, big fluffy buttons you might have on the front of a blouse. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see this or not, but the edges of the plant have these little hairs. No, not really. They're too fine, and our camera's not good enough. But that's where it gets its name, yucca. These it's not in the yucca family. It's in the lily family. But and the little spiny little hairs are not prickly like yucca, but it looks kind of yucca-ish. So whoever named it that. It gets the name snake root from the root. The root at the bottom is a very dense, dark. Now this one is beginning to turn. When you first dig it, I just got part of the root. I wanted to leave the other there so it could continue to grow. But this very dense part, and I'll show you in a little bit how we use that to make medicine. And then it has these little snake roots on it. The fine roots that come out of the heavier corm that grows at the edge of the plant. So the medicine, the basha medicine, is made from this dark, heavy part. And you can smell it. I wish you could, somebody needs to make a smell feature for computers. I wish you could smell this. It has a very strong, earthy, medicine-y smell. It's not sharp at all. It's just very rich and very medicinal. So I'm going to just pull this root off. It just will snap right off of the lily part of the plant. This part of the plant is substantial enough that you could use that also in would have the medicine in it. But the strongest medicine is in the root. Now, my introduction to snake root, it's one of my favorite plants. I just love it. Was at Pine Arbor Tribal Town, where Sakim was my teacher. And we used that plant in one of our ceremonial medicines. And of course, I wanted with my whole heart and my whole being to find a place where snake root grows and I could collect it. But it's a rather unusual plant. It's not terribly rare, but you really have to know where to go. It likes find it in two different kinds of environments, like high pines, sandy places, and then often in roadside ditches where not where it's really wet, but where there's sand over marly clay. It particularly likes that kind of yellow marly clay. I guess there's something about the nutritional needs that it gets there. And so after I'd been introduced to Basha, anytime I was in the woods, I was watching, I was looking, I was calling, I was asking it to show itself to me. And this went on for 2 or 3 years, I guess, until coming back from a ceremony at Pine Arbor, this time of the year, the time of the year where the plant is putting on these little white showy blossoms. The road that I passed probably once or twice a week, I saw a flash of these little white knobs, little white buttons. Whipped the truck around, and there it was. It had I'd been driving past it for, I don't know, months, and it just hadn't been time for it to show itself to me. But it did show me where it was, and I stopped and visited, made an offering of tobacco, and promised to come back again. And after a time of several visits, there were a lot of plants there. There were probably 40 or 50. And I collected some and took them and put them in my medicine garden here at my house. Short time after that, I was a little further up in central Alabama, and I was awakened early in the morning. We were visiting with friends and staying in a hunting lodge out on a plantation that did public hunts and things. We were not there to hunt, but had been put up in the lodge. And I woke about daybreak, and I heard a plant calling me. I thought it was red root, which is another important medicine plant. And I had not found a place yet where red root grew. So I got up as soon as it was light and went out and followed the call, and I found a place where it was not red root, it was Basha, snake root. Hundreds of plants growing down in a low area. And then as the plant and I began to get more connected with each other. I began to see it in other places, and now I know of many places where snake root grows, including places that I've moved it to that I knew it would be at home. I started visiting in Oklahoma at one point in my training because one of my teachers lived there, and I was staying with some friends out there on a big farm and cattle ranch, and right out their front door there was Basha growing in the pasture. And so that's kind of how it works. Once you get a connection with the plant will begin to show itself to you. When I was out in Oklahoma at the green corn celebration that they were having at Hilebi tribal town, I had a friend who had sponsored me to go there. I heard a great Basha story. Hilebi tribal town is up in central Alabama, in the part of the state that was the last stronghold of the Muskogee people during the Muskogee War. It's not too far from Horseshoe Bend, which was the last great pitched battle that broke the back of the Muskogee people and resulted directly in them being moved to Oklahoma. But Hilebi, the people of Hilebi were a red town, meaning they were a war town. They provided warriors when the Muskogee people were threatened, and they were among the Red Sticks. If you know the history of that war, there were some people carry white sticks in their town to indicate they're a peace town, a town of refuge. Others carry red sticks, which means they're warriors. And so Hilebi was a red stick town. And when the Jackson's army and the other militias and people who were trying to conquer the Creeks were pushing toward that last big battle at Horseshoe Bend, a call went out to gather as many Muskogee warriors as possible, and Hilebi sent every able-bodied male that they had. The Creek people, Muskogee people, held out for a few days, but eventually they were overwhelmed, primarily because the Cherokee, who were fighting with Jackson against their Muskogee enemies, performed a flanking maneuver and came in and put them under fire from two sides, and the line broke, and it was a great slaughter. It's estimated that 900 Muskogee warriors were killed, plus whatever women and children and old people who were sheltered behind the line. So it was a great massacre, and the Red Stick uprising was over, and there were some cleanup operations, but that broke the back of the Muskogee attempt to maintain even that little small part of their homeland in central Alabama. So people were sent to Oklahoma, and of course the Hilebi survivors were sent out as well. Not many of them, very few of the men, none of their leadership, and not an awful lot of women and children and elders either. But the few that were left, once they got to Oklahoma, the first thing they did was establish a ceremonial grounds so that they could strengthen themselves and survive with Creator's help and with the help that they could give each other. And they put a grounds out in east central Alabama between Dustin and Hannah. If you want to get out a map and do some looking, if you find Dustin, Oklahoma, and Hannah, Oklahoma, Hilebi was just almost halfway between them. And they, as part of their ceremonial life in summer, this part of the summer, they have the Green Corn Festival, celebration of the ripening of the new corn. And it's kind of like Christmas and Easter together for people in our culture who practice Christianity. And it's also family reunion, time when people all come together. As a part of that, they take medicines, various ceremonial medicines, to strengthen themselves and to make themselves ready to go face the new year. It's the New Year celebration. The new year begins at green corn, when the green corn gets ripe. They didn't have a maker of medicine to make medicine for them. So they hired someone from another tribal town to come and make medicine for them. In fact, when I visited 10, 15 years ago, this was almost 200 years, and they still didn't have their own maker of medicine. The man who was my teacher in Oklahoma, who was a member of another tribal town, made medicine for them. But back in the early 1800s, 1820s, 30s, they didn't have a maker of medicine. All of their tribal leadership had been killed in the wars. And so they hired somebody to come, and they told him what their medicines had been. Each tribal town has its own collection of plant medicines that they use in ceremonies. And one of the medicines that they had used when they were in Alabama was basha, snake root. So they told him, and he said, "Oh, I can't make basha for you. You're almost destroyed. It's too strong for you. It's too strong for your community and the condition you're in. If I made basha for you, it would wipe you out." And so the maker of medicine put other medicines in their ceremonial medicine, but no basha. And it became their tradition not to have basha. Though now they are a strong community. They have a strong tribal town and many members. But, after almost 200 years of not using basha, that has become part of their tradition. The absence of basha is part of their tradition. But most Muskogee tribal towns use basha as a ceremonial medicine. It is sometimes called touch medicine. Basha is so strong that you don't want much of it. And I'll show you after I've made the medicine how it's received into the body and how it's used. But I was familiar with using basha from my association with tribal towns on this side of the river, and learned to work with it and learn to use it. Now, just as an indication of how strong this medicine is, in addition to being used as a ceremonial medicine, it's used in a medicine that's given in a special circumstance where when a community has their green corn ceremony or other ceremonies, everyone is invited to come. But if you come, you're expected to be properly prepared and properly respectful. And one of the firmest rules is there is no drinking, no consumption of alcohol or any kind of mind-altering substances when you come to the square ground. So if somebody comes and is obviously drunk, they take the person out to the edge of the square ground, find a nice big pine tree in the sun, tie them to the tree, and then give them a huge dose, about a quart of basha medicine, which effects a very rapid and total and complete cleansing of the whole gastrointestinal tract. a very messy and very thorough and very uncomfortable experience. And then once the person is totally cleansed and has sweated out the alcohol and expelled all of the alcohol and anything else they have in them, they come untie them and lead them out to the edge of the grounds and tell them to go home, and then say, well, we thank you for coming to our celebration, our ceremony. We're sorry you weren't prepared, but we hope you will come back again sometime when you are properly prepared. Basha is also used medicinally as a healer of wounds and skin troubles. But today I want to show you Basha as a ceremonial medicine. So what I have here, I'm going to tip this down so you can see what I'm doing. That's going to be kind of weird perspective, but there's a little crock with some water, a medicine log for pounding, and a little pounding stick. So I'm going to dip in the water to get it softened, and you can see how tough this is. I'm pounding this pretty hard now. It's beginning to open up. Now, while I'm going to stop talking, because when you're making medicine, you have to pay attention to the medicine. And there's a whole series of prayers and songs that are offered. And I'm going to do just a shortened version of this. I'll pound a bit, and then I'll dip in the water and squeeze the medicine out and pound some more. So for a minute or so here, I'm not going to be talking to you. I'm going to be talking to the plant and the creator. Now, while I was making the medicine, I was going through a series of prayers and songs, naming the medicine, thinking about the directions, the 4 directions, the colors associated with the directions, the people who would be using the medicine, and then there's a 4th cycle of prayers and songs that I call bragging on the medicine. You tell the medicine how strong it is and how good it is and how beautiful it is and how sacred it is. And so, if you invited somebody to your house to be with you on a special occasion, you would think those thoughts about them and maybe say those things to them. Now, you could see the white inner part of the medicine. It as it hits the air, it begins to turn dark. You see the little splatters of the medicine on the side of the crock. That little half-inch piece of root that I put in the medicine will turn this medicine dark. I don't know if I can. Well, you can't.
Yeah, look at that.
You can't really tell much about it, but it's already started turning the medicine dark, and it will be in 30 minutes or so, you won't be able to see into the water because it will have turned it so dark, and it gets black, and that smell and power of the medicine is there. When it comes time in the ceremony to use the medicine, it's applied in two ways. One way is just to touch the medicine. So you put two fingers in the medicine, and you make a little splash to the south and to the east and to the north and to the west, and then you touch the medicine to your lips 4 times, so that you just get a little bit of it in you. You don't want much. I mean, you could probably drink a teaspoon of this, and it wouldn't cause any problem. The young men, then there's another way that the snake root medicines used, Bashas use. The young men who spend the whole weekend on the grounds, dancing and singing, and sort of carrying the responsibility for the ceremony. The young men and the elders and the ceremonial and tribal leaders will stay on the grounds almost continuously. Visitors come and go, and then at night there are stomp dances where large number of people come. But the young men and the elders and the tribal leaders are committed to special responsibility for being on the grounds and using the medicine. So they would take the medicine through that whole period of time, at least all day Saturday and into Sunday, and they are scratched. In the old days, the scratching was done with gar jaws. If you've ever seen the gar fish, they have these long needle studded jaws. When gar are not available, the maker of medicine will use straight pin, and so the medicine is rubbed onto your arm if that's where you're being scratched, and then the pin or the gar jaws will be used to make scratches so that the medicine gets in you. And those there are 4 rounds of taking medicine, so that when it's over, you may have scratches on both arms, on several places in your legs, on your back, and then that gets the basha in. The basha is an otherworld medicine because it's a root, because of its darkness, because of its earthiness, and so it brings in that balance of the otherworld powers to balance what you're getting from Ofunga above, the sun and the fire. So that's plant power in its most immediate form. Now I'll take this medicine after it's finished making, and I'll freeze it to preserve it. And the next time we have a ceremonial gathering, I'll take this medicine and add it to that we prepare for the community, so that it won't be wasted. All right, any questions or comments about any of that?
Hi, this is Leslie.
Yes.
I'm wondering, you've explained how it's used on different things and that it has power. Uh, In these ceremonies, I know that in many traditions, there's a psychoactive power of these medicines, and oftentimes it's used when, I mean, you mentioned if someone comes inebriated to a ceremony, but oftentimes my understanding is that they're used when someone has an alcohol problem or a drug problem or a behavioral problem, and they would bring that person into the ceremony. They would have a ceremony specifically
Yes.
for that. I have some experience with a particular one. It's not a root. From what I understand, it's a bark. It comes from a bark. And I wonder kind of in what ways that might be similar to what I've heard about and what I've experienced.
Right. Muskogee medicine doesn't have that psychoactive element like you might find with mushrooms or ayahuasca or
That was my experience.
yeah, that kind
With
of
actually with both, but I have more
right.
experience with ayahuasca.
The largely because there's nothing like ayahuasca in Muskogee country. I mean, mushrooms certainly, but the Muskogee teaching about mushrooms is that they are ghost food, not to be eaten, except in extreme circumstances. They had no fermented beverages. The only mind-altering substance was the black drink with where you get a little caffeine buzz, but that's that's about it. So that's not a part of the Muskogee healing traditions. The altered state of consciousness a Muskogee person would come through fasting and prayer, like Vision Quest, though it's not, it's not exactly the same.
No, but yeah. Okay, well, thank you.
Yes. Anything else? Well, we actually are out of time. If you have questions about any of the things I talked about today, we might have time to get to that tomorrow. But remember to prepare something for show and tell tomorrow, if you can get to that point in your project, and we'll spend some time at the end of our class seeing what you've learned from the plant that you have worked with, and so you might think about not only what you've learned about your plant or what you've learned from your plant, or how you've come to the project that you're working on, but if there's some deeper connection that this process has helped you to feel with the plant that you're working with, you might want to talk about that. Okay, thank you much. See you. Well,
Artist
see you
talk tonight. Artist
ahead.
talk tonight, 6:30 to 7:45. Go get a quick supper.